It's allowed me and given me the comfort of letting my guard down and just
Yeah.
being my true self and interacting with humans on like a non-bravado type level. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I can walk around with caring and kindness and love in my heart because I'm not worried about what's going to happen to me.
Welcome to the Kicked in the Junk podcast. This is a podcast where we discuss the low times in life, where we talk about when the things that have just hit us so hard and it feels like we can never recover from. We discuss it all and look at, the raw emotion that we feel during those times. And more importantly, what would we learn from these low moments and how sometimes those moments catapult us into the next amazing thing that we didn't even see coming. All right, Grayson. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here. And I know you have a busy schedule. Just looking back at some of the stuff you've done, and I know we've worked together at the gym years ago, and you've kind of looked like you're living a whole different life now, and it's fascinating to see. I had to write it down because there's been a lot of things you've done, and it's so wild to see. But you're heavyweight champion twice at A4K, and then that's MMA. Havoc heavyweight champion. You've been the United MMA title contender twice. So you've been doing a lot in that area, in that space, and in the ring, quite literally. And now you're coming up, you're doing bare knuckle boxing. On top of that, you're also starting on your acting career. Seen some clips of commercials and stuff you're doing. It's really cool to watch. I'm like, man, I like know this guy. This is wild to see. Not to mention some things related with Star Wars and stuff going on there, which is a whole other discussion and I could talk about for days. So thank you for being on the show. So happy you're here. I'm so excited to just hear some of the stuff you are doing now and some of the challenges you've had because of pushing yourself. I always see it. That's kind of the theme I'm getting from you is you're constantly pushing yourself. So yeah, I want to just jump right into this.
Sure, man.
And again, you're doing all this stuff, which is amazing. So my first thought that came to me was, these things aren't easy. You're constantly looking at this list and what you're doing now. You're constantly putting yourself in like really tough scenarios. I mean, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
So maybe you'd want to dive down that a little bit, like what it takes to do that, why you're doing that, and then we'll dive into some moments.
Well, I mean, the fighting thing, it kind of goes way back for me. I moved around quite a bit when I was a kid, right? And I was always the new guy at school. And long story short, I was getting bullied quite a bit. And I had always had an interest in martial arts. And it wasn't until, I started standing up for myself and started defending myself and hitting back kind of thing, fighting back.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, hey, I'm pretty good at this. You know what I mean? So having that experience and then I ended up getting in a lot of street fights and a lot of once I realized that I was good at it, and that's kind of one of the things that people knew me for. I was fighting all the time. And then one of my friends actually said to me when we were about 18, 19, he said, you'll never be more than just a street fighter, right? Which kind of ignited my fire. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll just show this guy, right?
Okay.
So I started competing at a young age. Well, not at a young age, about 18, I had my first fight. And that was 25 years ago. I'm going to be 45 next month. So I've been fighting for a long time. But once I started fighting competitively and training with guys that actually know how to fight, it was a very humbling experience, right? I mean, to train with guys, all the way up into like some of the top guys in the world. That's the old adage, there's always someone tougher, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, so finding that strength and being able to fight at a high level, I believe that it allowed me to be a little bit more of my true self, right? I feel like especially these days, we all have, especially as men, we have a lot of false bravado, right? And everybody's kind of walking around with their, chest puffed up because, if you don't know how to defend yourself, you kind of go back to that mode of like, you're
I'm going to look like I can.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So So training and fighting for so long has allowed me to be my true self, which is, I think I like to think of myself as a fairly kind individual, but that has come through a lot of getting my ass kicked.
Well, and
and
it's so funny because I remember the first time we met, and I was like, oh my God, here's this huge, this mountain of a man. I'm like, okay, we're talking, whatever. And then, we're around each other more and more. I'm like, oh, this is the nicest, one of the nicest guys I've ever met in my life. And then when I started finding out you did fighting, I was like, wait, what? Like, how does that work? But I absolutely love it because it kind of supports the idea that, we get people pigeonhole each other, right? Oh, you're a fighter, you must be this, and you're a nice guy, you're a pussy or whatever. And then it's like, no, wait, you can have both.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I realized through talking like with counselors and stuff like that, I was going through a tough time, probably about 15 years ago. And I realized that because I had been bullied lots growing up and stuff like that, I had turned myself into this guy. I got covered myself in tattoos and muscles, and I learned how to fight really well. Like nobody fucked with me after that, right? I realized
Yeah.
like, okay, if I'm this guy, then people will leave me alone, right?
Mm.
It was almost like, I don't want to say like a false shield or whatever, but I built this shield around me in between like getting my feelings hurt and shit like that, right?
Yep. A
So
defense. Yep.
yeah, and then it just kind of, after I had used that persona, I guess, if you will, for so long, it actually kind of became who I am, and it's allowed me, because I am this way, it's allowed me to be my true self, right?
Mm.
In sense.
No, it does. And I think that's so wonderful because, like I said before, it allows for both. And it allows, even for other people out there that are, struggling. And because there seems to be this, I don't want to say an attack on masculinity, but sometimes it
Right.
feels like it. And allowing that, like, look, you can do both. You can
Yeah.
be that badass guy that's willing to step in a ring with another monster that's 200 whatever pounds.
Yeah.
And why, and that takes a lot of courage right there. I couldn't do it. I'll give you props for that. A huge amount of respect.
Yeah, I
But then to
appreciate
be able to turn around and, and I see, you have your partner now and you have these kids in your lives and you're doing this other stuff, and allow yourself to be another person because you're not worried that someone could try to hurt you with their words or whatever, right?
Exactly. Well, I think it's like, I'm confident in my abilities, and I'm confident in my day to day, that I feel that I don't have to walk around with this false sense of anxiety. Like, for example, the police, right? I've trained with a couple police officers, and they've said to me that the majority of them don't really know how to do any sort of combat, hand-to-hand combat, right? So they're walking around in this very, very dangerous, hard job,
Yeah.
that they're dealing with a certain aspect of society that has them like anxious all the time, but they don't internally have the confidence and the ability to even defend themselves if they were attacked without using their weapon, right? So
Yeah.
we have the society of men, not just saying like police, obviously, but like the majority of men walking around on like high alert, almost like, if you just watch the news for like any sort of amount of time, or just basically look at what's going on right now, like in Vancouver, there's like record amounts of random violent attacks on people for no reason. And
Wow.
it's just like our society, I feel like our society, not to be like negative, but there's a lot of problems going around, and there's like a lot of crumbling, right? So
Mhm.
if you don't have the training, then you're going to be walking around unconfident and unsure, and that makes you do bad decisions, and it doesn't allow you to be your true self, because you feel like you have to have your guard up all the time. So like,
Yes. Yes.
I'm comfortable walking around in any situation, and so it's allowed me and given me the comfort of letting my guard down and just
Yeah.
being my true self and interacting with humans on like a non-bravado type level. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, I can walk around with caring and kindness and love in my heart, because I'm not worried about what's going to happen to me.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I love that because, like I said, it allows for more of that and maybe encourage others to, you can let down your guard and you don't have to walk around with your chest puffed trying to prove a point. because when your guard's up, do you build connection?
Yes,
You
100%.
don't, right? And I bet some of the best people that is because you're allowed to, you bring your guard down around them. And
Yeah,
that stands true for you and anybody, versus
yeah,
when we put up this false, defense because we want to look tough or strong or just don't want anybody to attack us,
yeah.
right? We're
And that's
shutting them out.
exactly. And that's like when people are like that and they have that shield up, like you're only seeing a fraction of like who the person really is, right?
Totally.
So if somebody is like, somebody's at the very, so that's another thing what I like about fighting is that it's come full circle on a lot of things for me. So testing myself regular with difficult adversity, like
Mhm.
on a daily basis, I'm training with the, I've trained with the toughest of the toughest, right? So
Yeah.
it's that daily grind of taking whatever's happened in that day or whatever's happening in your life, all the life's adversities that we all go through, and being able to filter it out. So like I truly feel that every man and woman, just to humans in general, needs the best way to get through something or to like process something is through hard physical exercise. It doesn't necessarily need to be fighting per se, but
Mhm.
I mean, as someone who goes to the gym regularly yourself, like it's hard to get out of your head, especially if you're a regular in the gym. I mean, everybody should, that's where you should start. You should be good physically with yourself and comfortable with yourself, but you need something to take your mind out of it also,
Mhm.
which is for me, it's combat training. It could be
Yeah.
any sort of skiing, biking,
Yeah.
canoeing, whitewater rafting, whatever that person is that takes them out of their comfort zone physically, but also mentally, because there is some sort of consequences with it, right?
Totally. And I think
But,
the common sorry, I was gonna say I think the common theme there is like you have to be when you're doing combat training. I've done a little bit with a
mhm,
common friend of ours, Rico. It's an
right.
amazing dude.
Yeah.
And but you have to be present.
Yes.
Whereas if you're on a bike, let's just say in a gym, you can literally tune out, watch TV, and move your legs. But if
Yeah.
you're doing combat training or whitewater rafting, or if you're downhill biking or skiing, like you have to be right there. You can't allow those other little thoughts to get in your mind, right? So it is a beautiful thing. And obviously that's you feel alive that way too.
100%. And it's something that you can, it's a skill that you can, you know, it's in your back pocket whenever you need it, kind of thing, right? Like, okay. And so like life, from my perception, is just a series of up and downs, man. It's like
Mhm.
very cyclical. And it's just, that's just how it is, man. And there's no really time limit to whether it's going to be, how long either mode is going to be. Like you're up forever and everything's going great. And then bang, like something can happen overnight where your whole life shifts. You're like, oh shit, okay, now I'm down here. So what are the lessons that I've learned to pull me back up to here, right? And you can
Totally.
really get back up here as if you've been down here a number of times and figured out a way. Okay, and you recognize that pattern, like, okay, so your life is falling apart, things aren't going very well for you, you got A, B, and C problems. Okay, so what am I going to do? Look in your past, what have I experienced before that's can pull me back up out of here, right?
Yeah.
And for me, for my individual, it's training for a fight, and it's like
Mhm.
having something that I can throw myself wholeheartedly into, right?
Absolutely. No, and I absolutely love that. I love that you said that is that you can have those highs and life's great. And then bam, you get hit. And that's honestly the theme of the podcast is getting
Right.
kicked in the junk because it's unpredictable. You don't see it coming. And it can come in so many ways. So I want to dive in that bit because you're just unpacking a lot of really good stuff. But I want to put a kind of hold for a second and just talk about a recent low time of yours or something where you did feel like you got, absolutely kicked square in the junk and you have to recover because I always tell the kids, I coach football and it's easy to win when you're winning,
Yeah.
right? It's easy to win when you're winning, but how do you can navigate that? So maybe
Yeah.
you want to unload that a
100%.
little bit. What was a tough time for you? And then let's kind of dive into that.
Well, man, I've experienced quite a few tough times in my life, but like
Yeah.
it's funny that you asked me to do this podcast because I'm actually kind of going through it right now, right?
Well,
And
thank you for being real. I appreciate that.
yeah, man, 100%. It's honestly, I'm dealing with one of the hardest, probably the hardest thing I've ever had to deal with right now, um, personally. And my best friend committed suicide a couple
Shit.
months ago. And it was, yeah, it's been a real hard one, man.
Oh
That's why
my
it's
God.
a little bit hard for me when we initially scheduled the podcast, is because I felt almost disingenuous because
Mhm.
I've been falling apart quite a bit. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
currently. So I felt, you want me to do this podcast about talking through hard times and shit like that. And I'm like literally into the hardest time of my
You're
life right now, right?
wow. I'm sorry. My condolences.
Oh man, yeah, I
That's
appreciate
that's
that, man.
crazy.
It's been tough, and it's something
Yeah.
that was unexpected, obviously, right? And it's
Yeah.
just somebody taken out of your life that you talk to every day, right? So
Yeah.
was that was probably the guiding factor behind me taking this bare knuckle boxing fight. I mean, I've always wanted to do that, but this came along at a time where, I'm a true, not even before this had happened, I'm a true believer in filtering out whatever's going on with you with hard physical exercise. Like you got to put yourself through it, you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
every day, man. I mean, not every day, but like a lot of days before I go into boxing class, I kind of break down in my car a little bit and shed a tear for my buddy, right? Like every time
Yeah.
before I'm going in there to train, and
Mhm.
I'm using that as like not momentum, should you say, but it's like my thing that's like driving me to train
It's your why.
harder than most. You know what I mean? I'm the first one in there, last one to leave, kind of thing.
That's awesome. And you know what? I think I absolutely love that you shared that for so many reasons. Thank you, because that takes a lot of
Yeah.
vulnerability. Um, and I love that, you said sometimes you do feel those emotions. And it's funny, 'cause I've actually even haven't even really talked about this on this podcast myself, but I've
Yeah.
had that lots where I have my partner Emily and we're hanging out, and for whatever reason, I'll just be crying. I can't even figure it out. I don't know
Yeah.
why.
Yeah.
And then after I'm like, and also she's, what's wrong? I'm like, I have no idea. But all
Right.
these things, for whatever it is, maybe I'm not good at processing them. Maybe I'm not good at, can't suss it out. But for whatever reason, I'm upset and I'm crying. And I'm like, I don't know why, but
Mhm.
that's why I was glad that you said that you did that, because I always feel so better, so much better after.
Oh
And
yeah, man.
and
And
I feel
it's
like you got a clear head too, right?
you do, man, and it's like, it's okay to break down and process those things, because I feel like if you don't, man, they just don't go anywhere, right?
Yep.
And I see it all the time, and I'm sure you see it too, right? Like you train, just to speak about guys specifically, but like, you get those guys that are, in their 50s, late 50s, early 60s. They've like worked their ass off at their job, and they're, now they're like a little bit overweight. They're 60, 70 pounds overweight,
Mhm.
and they've had so much, they don't learn how to filter it through, right? So it's
Yeah.
just dealing with problems and negativity, and you're taking it all in, but it's not going out. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you have this surplus of like bullshit negative it's not going anywhere. So it comes out at like fucked up times when you're not
Yeah.
expecting it. Right? And
Totally.
so I'm a firm believer of just like you got to filter that out, man. And it's it's okay to be sad, but don't sit there. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And
Yes.
okay, I'm gonna be sad today. I'm gonna feel this shit, and I know what it is. And I'm like, it's okay. I'm just gonna sit in it for a day, but never more than a day. And then tomorrow I'm
Yeah.
gonna wake up and fucking hitting the gym, getting up at 5 a.m., going to
Yeah.
the gym. If I'm up for it, I'll do second workout that day. Work all day, work another, do a physical fight training at night. And
Yeah.
you just get that out, right?
I absolutely love that. And I think there is, I think more people need that. I think more people need to, and this is me and my wife talk about this lots, is like how to find that balance,
Right.
because it's very, I find sometimes we can get caught in that, the
Yeah.
victim, and caught in the emotions. And so the balance is, okay, how can I feel this and
Yeah.
not get caught in it? And so I like what you said, is you give yourself a time limit. And I do the same thing. I mean, for you, it's a day, and I think that's great. I think more people need to do that, but it's with the intention, knowing like, but that doesn't mean like, okay, I'm gonna have a day, I'm gonna be upset, and then tomorrow I might like maybe go for a little walk, and then the next day I might, and it's like, no, I'm gonna feel it. I'm gonna just, it's all gonna come out, and then I'm back to me.
Yeah.
I try to do the same with myself in a condensed way, because I'm really not good at processing negative emotions.
Mm.
And typically I'm like, no, they can just rebound off me. It's all good. But when it hits me, it's like, I'm like, I'm gonna give myself like an hour. I'm like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
cry. That's it. But it's so funny because I'll have this breakdown. I don't know why.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, maybe it was this, maybe it was this. And we're talking. And then after I'm like, okay, I gotta do this. I was like, we gotta go. But it's funny because I always feel clear and I have a plan and I always feel like there's a reason and I can work through that.
And I mean, at least you're given the fact that you're recognizing, you're like, okay, well, maybe you haven't quite identified what it is. I mean, obviously it's
Yep.
something, right? But
Yep.
it's I see my friends and they got families and stuff, and just like there's just so much pressure to be the best you can at everything, right?
Yeah.
Like, you got to be the strong man and like be good for your kids and good for your family, good provider, be a protector. Got to be the best, the best, the best. And like
Yeah.
as awesome as that is to like constantly strive and have goals, like it's a lot of pressure on a guy,
Yeah.
right? On anybody these days, just to survive, man. Like a trip to the grocery store is like stressful, right? Like, man, like how am I gonna like, paycheck to paycheck to paycheck, trying to buy good food for your family and like, provide a good shelter. I mean, it's so difficult in the society, and it's like you can see it collapsing all around us. Like, and it's just causing disruption within the country. Do you know what I mean? And like everybody's so divided, but you never hear anybody like, okay, let's band together and like let's do something. Everybody talks about community, but really, are they doing anything?
Yeah.
No, it's people complaining and finger pointing. And it's like, oh, this guy's doing this guy's doing our country. And like honestly, for me, like I don't know if you ever heard of Jocko Willink, probably, right? I
Sounds familiar.
so anyways, I listened to his audiobook, Extreme Ownership, and
Oh, okay. Yes. Yep.
it was about taking accountability. And like when
Yes.
I was listening, this was a couple years ago, I was in a situation that I didn't like, and I felt, I don't want to say that I felt entitled, but I felt that more should be coming to me than it was.
Yes.
And then I was like, this guy does this guy does that, and like kind of finger pointing a little bit, right?
Yep. Yep.
Listen to this book, and it like literally changed the way that I thought about everything, because it's like, well, I said yes to this, so like whose
Yep.
fault is it really, right? Like they're
Yep.
just always, everybody else is just doing their job, and I said yes to it, so it's up to me to like get myself out of it. So instantly my mindset changed from everybody else's fault or a couple guys other fault to it's taking it internally. And then all that time that I was spending blaming other people, I now turn to inwards. And as soon as you do that, you're forced to come up with this situation change, right?
Absolutely. Well, and I've said this before, but I love that because I've been there before. I've been there before in relationships and careers and any bad scenario. Anytime I've felt like I've gotten kicked in the junk and had a low,
Yeah.
and it's such a tough feeling to be like, oh my God, this was me.
Yeah.
But then when you start like going through it, like, oh, this was me. Oh my God. And you're thinking this, and then you go like, wait a minute, this was me. So if I can create this shitstorm
Yeah.
of bad, that means I can also create an amazing, wonderful life for myself.
100%, man. Perspective is
Exactly. It's the power, right? And this is what I'd say is like if you're pointing the finger, wherever you point the finger, that's who you're giving the power. If you're pointing at, oh, they did it, well, then you're giving away your power. Versus if you're like, no, this is me, like it's on me. I got it. Yeah, interest rates going up. Okay, it's on me. Oh yeah, grocery, that's cool. It's on me. I can do this. Like that's fine. Like, yeah, I can blame, point fingers and whine, or I can just own it. Be like, what can I do? How can I figure this out? What can I do to get better and become a better person? Because to tie back to society,
yeah.
it's very easy to point blame. It's very easy, like you said, and a lot of people want community but with that comes healing, right? And that's what's needed is healing. But the easiest way to start is by healing yourself.
Yeah.
So it ties back to earlier what you said is this: if we're stop putting up this big false shield in front of us,
Yeah.
and we're constantly like looking to fight somebody, or well, I can't fight, but I'm going to try to use my words and I'm going to try to use whatever I can to just so you don't try to fight me. It's like, or instead live with love in your heart.
Yeah.
Yeah, that person cut you off driving down the road and you could get out and try to fight them, or you could, and I've had this because I can get some road rage, just go, wait a minute, maybe this person just didn't see me because I've done that before.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're really late for work, or maybe they got to take a dump, or I don't know, whatever. Like you just don't know. So you can own that and heal yourself first. And if you're healed, you won't hurt others. I've heard this saying before: it's healed people heal other people, hurt people hurt others.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So if you have hurt in your heart, you're going to want to do that. So,
Yeah.
what a great way to start.
Yeah, 100%. I agree, man. And like, I moved in quite a different number of cities, and I've been the one thing about like being a fighter and being able to be my true self is that I'm comfortable meeting new people all the time, right? I love meeting new people. That's kind of my thing, right? So like, and being involved in fighting for so long, I've met a lot of people from other countries and like all over Canada and stuff like that. And so having such a wide spectrum of friends and people that I interact with, that the one thing that I've learned that everybody actually has in common, the one thing for sure, is that everybody's going through like their own shit.
Yeah.
And it's like,
yep,
completely different lives and different cultures and different people, but everybody's going through their version of shit. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
And people lash out, like, knowing a little bit about people in psychology, when you see someone lash out, like the first thing I think of is like, okay, what are they going through? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's so easy to point the finger and be like, oh, fuck that guy, like you're an asshole, blah blah blah, without really knowing their whole story, right?
Yep.
And then it comes back to putting up that shield. So like we walk around and we put up this shield to block all the negative shit, but at the same time, in doing that, you're blocking a lot of positive too, right? Like a wall or a shield, whatever you want to call it, blocks out everything.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to let your guard down enough, but be skilled enough to filter stuff through. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, okay, well, it's all coming at me, but I'm going to take this and this. That's negative. I'm going to block that. It goes right by you, right? Or it does come in you. You have the skills to process it out, and it doesn't stay inside.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. And it's such a metaphor too. And I love how you draw this connection between fighting. Because then when you're saying that, I'm imagining you like ducking and dipping and parrying these. Not that I'm good at it, but I imagine this is how you process. You're like, all right, I'm going to parry that one. I'm going to dip through this.
100%.
Here comes this uppercut. I'm like, well, here it comes, right? Like,
yeah.
So
I tie a lot of stuff back into fighting because it's just been such a part of my life, but I also, because there's so many analogies to, like, we're all fighting, right? You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, because I do it competitively in a cage against another human being, that's just my fight that I go through, right? Everybody's going through their fight, and everyone has to have skills. And we all lose fights too, right? And like the fights that I've lost, I've learned way more, because you're like, okay, I even add that to relationships. Like, okay, like the relationships that I've been in that didn't work out were fights that I lost. And after every one, okay, well, what did I do last one that I'm not going to do again? And so now I finally think I got it figured out. I just stopped doing shit that I was losing fights. You know what I mean?
No, and I love that you found that connection, because so many times, and unfortunately I've been there, so many times you keep doing the same thing, right? And you're doing, that's insanity, right? Doing the same thing, expecting different results, versus going, analyzing it and going, what did I do wrong? And this is what I tell kids that I coach in football. This is what I tell anybody I'm coaching and helping, is like, you're either winning or you're learning.
Yeah.
Right. And if you look at it like that, it's like both are good.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So now there's no negative sides, or, obviously losing isn't fun, but if it comes with a bunch of lessons, that's really valuable.
Oh man. And that's what makes you stronger, is we have to take these losses and learn from them. And that's how we build our character and build stronger, and that's where we get our strength from, is like coming back after these losses. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to dive into something a little bit, because you talked about it, as you mentioned earlier, and this is really interests me because, again, me and my wife are doing this coaching. We're helping couples and people that want to be in relationships. And you talk about in your relationship, and you're in a relationship now. So how does Grayson, the fighter, the actor, you're going through this stuff, I want to know what that relationship looks like with your partner, and things you guys do to make sure you're on the same page, and just habits that you guys have to keep each other in check.
Sure. Well, for sure, for starters, we are our personalities, we're very compatible that way, right? And like we both put priority on kindness to others and kindness to each other, right? And I
I
think
love that.
yeah, when you sit down and you think, okay, like what am I looking for in a partner? And like when you think about, you know, not just what they look like or how much they have or what their title is or anything like that. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
what sort of values does this person have? And
Yes.
we both
Yes.
put kindness kind of at the top, right?
Yes.
So we're very kind to each other all the time. We're very kind to everybody else. So when you're kind all the time, it really falls into place. But another
Yep.
thing we do, you know, we've been together almost 5 years, right? And
Oh.
everybody argues and everybody fights and everybody gets
Yep.
irritated at their partner. But one thing that we do, we never talk down or never name call or anything like that. We're very understanding and we're just very good at communicating. Okay. Like
Mhm.
at being able to communicate, but also being very humble and being like, okay, you get in an argument and you guys go your separate ways for like an hour or two like that. One of us is always like, hey, sorry, I shouldn't have said that. You know, I'm just kind of upset. I blew up about this, but because we are each other's vents, right?
Mhm.
And usually end up like blowing up at the person close to you for whatever reason that's going on with work or your personal life or whatever. So we really don't take that personally, and we don't do like a back and forth if one person is upset, you know.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
kind of, let it like don't pick your fights and don't meet like head on. If one person like you can see is like visibly having a hard day, like don't make it harder.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like what's your problem? Like why are you being like that? Right? It's
Yeah.
like, well, like what's your problem? Like what can I do to help?
Yeah. How can I
Right?
support you?
Yeah. So like being communicative and just being open and being humble and being less prideful, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a good one because, well, actually, there's a lot of really good stuff there, and I love the first thing you said was your values, and that is something I feel like most people miss. And section we teach is looking at your values first,
Right.
because if, for example, you are a fighter and your partner is anti any kind of violence at all to the
Yeah.
extreme, let's say, right?
Yeah.
Just hypothetically, how is that going to work? It
Right.
can't, right? But
Right.
your values are aligned. So it's like, hey, we have ground, we have common ground that we can always go to.
Yeah.
And like you said, being humble, right? It's
Mhm.
very easy to point the finger. We've already talked about that versus coming at it and being like, no, you want what did I do? Going back to the extreme ownership, what did I do? And what can I own here? That's
Yeah.
mine. And how can I be there for you?
Mhm.
Right. And something for me and my wife, I always say is like, I can be a fast talker, right? I can get going. And if I'm asking, what's wrong? What's this? What's this? It's like, for her, it's like, oh, you're attacking me. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm like, I care about you, man. I'm attacking you. But then I realized, I'm like, okay, right. It's fast. I'm talking fast and I'm kind of over and over versus, okay, for me, it's talking really slow.
Right.
Right. It was like slowing it down because then not only am I just word vomiting and just trying to fix it because I can't, because that's something also too, I'd realize I can't fix it. Not most of the time, slowing it down and really like being very clear and intentional what I'm saying, not just try and then not trying to fix it.
Yeah.
And then sometimes even as something as simple as like lowering my stature, not just physically. So for example, if I wouldn't be standing up over top for talking to her,
Right.
because then it seems more like that versus like, okay, we're both sitting down, we're both lying down or whatever.
Yeah.
Just so the body language is less too. And those are
For
just little
sure.
lessons for me and her. So I absolutely love that, you're finding those things. So no, that's super great. And I want to continue to unpack more on that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah.
You and your partner, what was your partner's name?
Amanda.
Amanda. Okay. So you have this life of stepping into a cage, and I'm trying to wrap my head around this. You're going in there and you're fighting people. How does your partner deal with this? Like, I'm actually curious because that takes a lot from her and you guys being on the same page. So, like, how does she tie into this? And then, how do you find? Because I know with my partner, I find she brings out the best in me, and I always want to be the best for her. So, how does that relationship look, and how do you find she brings out the best in you?
Well, it's tough for her. The fighting thing is tough for her for sure
Yep.
because she cares about me and doesn't want to see me hurt, obviously, right? Like a lot of people that are close to me do.
Yep.
But she's been to a couple of my fights now, so she gets why I'm into it. And she understands that to me, it's not, I don't look at it as fighting personally.
Mhm.
I look at it as competing in a sport.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like I think that fighting, it is fighting, I get it, but for me, fighting has like a connotation to it that means that we're having like an argument or a physical like
Yeah.
disagreement. Do you know what I mean? Where like I
Yeah.
don't really disagree with anybody. If I disagree with you, I'll just walk away.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't look at it like that. I think once I explained it to her that it's like
You don't
this,
hate the guy across from you.
yeah.
Yeah, you
There,
don't hate the guy across from you. You're just fighting because it's a sport.
never.
Yeah,
Actually,
yeah.
I do better if I feel like I'm friends with the guy, right? So
Okay.
I always try to make light of like, the face off and stuff like that at the weigh-ins and
Yeah.
stuff. I always try to make it light and kind of humorous, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I mean, some guys like to have to pump themselves up to go fight somebody because they look at it like they are fighting, right? But I just going to compete against another man that's doing the same thing to me. We don't even know
Mhm.
each other. I don't even dislike people that I know. How am I going to dislike this guy I know nothing about?
Yeah.
What I mean? So I think that she gets it from that point, and she realizes that how important fighting is to me and competing and like keeping me in shape. And she realizes that it's my thing that filters out my negative energy. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yep.
So she's very supportive that way, but she also makes her very nervous because she doesn't like, it's a rough sport. A guy can
Yep.
get hurt. Like I've been hurt pretty bad a couple times, right?
Yep.
But she does realize it's my thing, and so she's a little hesitant at first, and she knows every time when I'm gonna fight again because I'll be like, babe, I gotta talk to you about something, and she knows every time now that that's the same thing. When I bring it up like that, it means I'm fighting again.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then she's like, nope, you said last time was it. That's it. And then, I talked to her, and then she kind of like, she understands it, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to compete, and I test myself at really hard things, right? Like the
Love
active
that.
stunts and being a competitive fighter. I'm going to be 45 next month, right? Like
Mhm.
that is old in any professional sport, especially fighting.
Yeah.
So she gets it, and she's super supportive, like she just wants me to she just want, especially like going through everything that I've been going through with my best friend and stuff like that. She understands that this is how I'm filtering out my
Mhm.
sadness, right? And like, I guess probably about 15 years ago, I went through like another really hard time where I found my dad dead on the floor, right?
Mhm.
And I had been like looking after him for a couple of years,
Oh my
and
God.
he had some pretty bad health problems. But so I was younger though, and not as equipped and not as wise, I guess you could say. And I went down a really dark path, like pretty fast, right? Like
Mhm.
I had lost all my money, lost a couple houses, you know,
Oh,
overdosed a couple times, and like it was a really
jeez.
it was a scary time, man. And I didn't, that was a time where I learned a lesson, a life lesson. Like, and sometimes, unfortunately, the important lessons come at a cost.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because I almost lost my life a couple times, and
Oh my God.
and I was in like such a bad spot. I'm like, okay, that's not how you process pain, with
Yeah.
covering it up with drugs and alcohol. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So because I learned that hard lesson, and you know, even if you do go through something hard, and you do use alcohol or drugs to get through it, you got to get through it sooner or later. You're just delaying the inevitable. You know what I mean?
Right.
I had to give myself a timeout and just be around nobody. And just I moved out of town. I moved into the interior, and just was by myself for like a long period of time. And it wasn't until I faded all the noise that I could, I was holding on guilt for
Yeah.
not being healthier part of my father's life. You know what I mean? I was a personal trainer. Like I've been in shape my whole life. Like why didn't I try to push more of like a physical presence on him? Maybe he would still be here. So I carried that guilt, which is a heavy burden to bear on
Yes,
anybody. And so
totally.
I had to be alone. I had to start training for a fight. It was actually like full on like Rocky style shit. I was like running outside in the bush with logs on my back in the
Oh,
snow. Oh yeah, it was wild, man. But it like again with the working through like the physical part of it, it had got me through it, right? And so when this time when my best friend died, I'm like, okay, well, I know that like I don't really drink anyways. I haven't really been a part of that life for like a long time. And but I'm like, okay, so this is a time where you just got to sit in it, man. You just got to sit in it. Like you try to process it, but sometimes you can't. Like sometimes you can process your own actions, but you can't really process others, right? And
yes.
you just have to sit with it, man. Excuse me. And it's gonna take some time. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, how do we bounce back? This is what I say to myself. Like, what's the best way for me to get back up here? Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That involves me training for a competition. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have to be like that for everybody, but it's all variable, right? Like that's
Yeah.
just my scale. Like, if you haven't competed and I think you're going through a tough time, like enter yourself in a fucking 5K walkathon or marathon or
Yeah. Do
sprint
something.
triathlon or like there's
Yeah.
any list of number of things that you can test yourself physically that don't require getting kicked in the face.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely some guys like it. That's not my thing, but I you know what I have a huge respect for it because again, it's just you're kind of locked in there quite literally and it
Yeah,
doesn't end till it's over. So it's quite takes a lot to do that. But for me it was football. For me it was, after my divorce and going through a really low time there and pitying myself and all this kind of stuff, it was like, okay, no, I need to give back. I needed to take the attention away from me and put it on somebody else. And that's when
yeah,
I started coaching again. And that's when I started playing football again. And for me, it was because, again, now I'm not out here and thinking about all these other things. I'm right here in the moment being present. So,
yeah,
yeah, absolutely. I would 100% agree. Anybody going through any tough time is do something that forces you to be present and physical,
yeah,
whatever
100%.
that is. And ideally, yeah, there's a goal and a fit, something that you have to push yourself towards because that makes you a stronger person, right?
Well, I mean, even to like switch it up to football, for example, like it's one thing to go to the gym, right, and train, but it's also, you have to have your mind sharp in the game where the consequences is you're going to get leveled by another guy,
Yeah,
right? So
absolutely.
you can't be out of your head. You have to be in your head physically and mentally, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really good analogy because you can use that and how you take on life because that's essentially what you're training for is to take on real world problems,
Yeah,
right? Being, now it's kind of an epiphany now, but it's like the idea that you're taking on real world problems now in the present, not hiding from them, not
yeah,
running from them, not pointing fingers and saying it's your fault or putting up that defense. It's just saying, okay, here it is. I just have to sit with it. I got to
yeah.
process it. I got to do something with it.
Mhm.
But you and I both know, and I hope other people realize, like running from it's not going to help any, and
No,
pointing
man.
blame, pointing blame doesn't help anything either, right?
Yeah, and the faster that you can get through that issue and talk it through, like the less time that it's going to affect you down the
Yes,
road. You know what I mean? So,
yes,
like for example, to bring it back to football for you, if you had an argument with your wife or husband or boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever, or you guys are arguing, and then you don't figure it out, but then you go to play the game, and it's still, that's still going to be at the top of your mind, and say you miss the ball or you get hit really hard, something happens there, or you're not at your best for the
hmm,
rest of your team. So like now your problems are causing other people problems, right? Because you
yep,
weren't at your best, then your whole team that was requiring to you to be at your best, and you're not, and you're letting
yep,
a bunch of other people down. And team could be anything. It could be your
work,
employee.
Yeah.
for example, like who you work with, who you work for, anybody. If you're carrying that shit from over here to over here, then you're doing them a disservice as well, right? Not
Yes.
only your partner, yourself, but now it's affecting other people. So you have to humble up and like take care of that problem when it's like when it arises. And like,
Yeah.
man, like I can't even think of, because of the way that my girlfriend and I are, and we will talk, like even if we have like a little disagreement or whatever, we're kind of getting each other's nerves, we'll like split apart for a couple hours. Like I'll go to the gym, she'll go to the gym, whatever. Like within an hour, one of us is like, hey, sorry, like, I was like this because this or whatever. And then because of we're like very open communication and we're like both willing to deal with it like in the moment, and we're very understanding, like, okay, I see your point of view. You have
Yes.
to be willing to see somebody else's point of view.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you look at their point of view, like, okay, well, I understand where you're coming from, or at least I'll try. And
Yep.
then because you deal with it right away, like I don't remember a single argument that we've ever had, because it's like we're so good at filtering out, like, okay, here's this negative thing that we've just made. Like, what are we gonna fucking hang on to it and let it
Hmm.
get bigger? Or are we gonna like talk about this and then it goes away and then we just go that way, that goes that way?
I love that. And you know what? I love that you guys are doing that, because that's something that me and Emily always talk about, is that kind of our like superpowers, that
Yeah.
we've been together, been married for 2 years, been together 4 years.
Nice.
And I don't think we've ever had a fight once. And I don't mean to like brag or like boast. It's just that we've had disagreements. We've had moments where we don't see the other person's point of view, or you say something dumb, because we're both verbal processors, which is kind of funny. If you think about it, we're both saying something like, wait, we didn't actually mean that. But so it can get funny that way, but we allow that flexibility. And we
Yeah.
have, you said, I love that you said humble up. I think that's amazing. But
Yeah.
we have the humility and and allow for that conversation. And we say that our conversations kind of like a storm, right? Or a wave, or an ocean. Be really calm and smooth, and it's amazing. Or sometimes it get a little rocky. But if you have that conversation, the waves are just kind of like this, right?
Yeah.
And if you constantly, and that's something that I noted what you guys are doing, and then we always do, is like we always have those little conversations. We always, hey, you know what? Some other day, I didn't like that. You didn't come to this with me. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
shit. Okay, no, you know what? And she said, this is why, and this is why, and you can do that as you want. I went, oh, damn, you know what? You're right. Like,
Yeah.
I can do better. I can be better.
Yeah.
But so we constantly do this with each other and have these little, we say what we actually mean and how
Mhm.
we feel, and not to attack, not to put
Yeah.
down, but just say, hey, this is how I'm feeling right now about this scenario with no expectations. And then it avoids this big blow up, because now you're not going into a conflict, let's say, whatever, something bigger. And now you're like, well, you said this and you this, and you're coming with all this a negative emotion that you've been holding on to for a week, 2 weeks, a month, a year, who knows?
Yeah.
And I've seen this, and I've been in that relationship and been the person and had it done to me.
Mhm.
Right. So
Because
that's because go ahead.
sorry, you end up with this stockpile of like
Yeah.
negativity, right? That's
Yeah.
like it's not even gonna make sense, some of it, right? Like, where
Yeah.
did that
Yeah.
come from?
Yeah, exactly. But if you always are constantly, I can't think of it like a valve, right? You're constantly releasing that pressure, that
Yeah.
valve. Then when something comes up, there is no pressure. It's like, oh, okay, right. We actually have something big here. But it's only going to be this right here that's big on our
100%.
own. Like you said, like this tough time you're going through, not all these other little arguments and all these other little things. Being you left the towels and you didn't help, whatever. Like these little things that can get to us. You're able to just let it out and then go, oh, okay, and nobody's mad or angry. It's just this is just how it is, and then you move on as you want, which is a beautiful thing.
Thanks, man. Well, yeah, and I also realize, man, that you don't need to be fucking right every time either, right? You know what?
Yeah.
You know what? Like, just
Yep.
choose the hill you die on. Pick your battle, however you want to look at it. It's like we're humans, right? Like we're flawed individuals in like
Yes.
every sort of the sense, and it's like, it drives me nuts. One of the things that drives me nuts is like the word insecure and how it's like
Mm.
looked at somebody like, oh, that person's insecure, like almost like they have a disease or something like that. Well,
Mm.
like guess what? We're all fucking insecure in like our own little ways.
Yeah.
And like that's okay, man. Like look at
Yeah.
what we're fed constantly about like be the best, look the best, act the best, be the
Yeah.
richest, be the
Yeah.
tallest, be the most jacked. Like, holy chill for a fucking second, okay? And it's like,
Yeah.
it's okay to have these like, okay, well, I don't really feel like the best right now, and then that's okay. But when you realize that, and that's on me, like, okay, well, I'm going to be better at that. You know what I mean? And
Yep.
it's just easier. It's easier to communicate with somebody if they're both on the same level. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you kind of said it there is that we have all this society, whatever. And unfortunately for me and my wife and what I've noticed is like, when you're on certain social platforms and you're getting inundated with this, then that, in your head, you start drawing pictures in your head thinking, wait a minute, but my should I be like this? Should I be like this? And you're getting exposed to all these things that 30, 40 years ago, you were never exposed to.
Yeah.
Right. So you didn't know any better. Like, so you have nothing to compare yourself to, which can be actually a really wonderful thing. Because now you're not trying to keep up with keep up with somebody who is tougher, stronger, better fighter. And you know what I mean? Because you're not like, I don't know, they're living their life, I'm living mine. I don't need to compare my life with them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I find, social media can be such a double-edged sword that way because it can bring people together.
Mhm.
But more often than not, I find it cannot, and it can cause people to compare and do all this. So yeah, I agree. I think there's, putting that attention to your own life, doing absolutely your best that you can at that moment is critical, and that varies. I have moments where I think, and this is where the gym is a great analogy, and I know you've been there before. You have days where you go to the gym and you're like, I'm fucking King Kong today, and I can lift anything and I don't care, and I will. And other days you're like, why am I being a little like I can't, I'm like half the weight and I can't even lift it. Like, why am I being a little pinch today?
Yeah.
But it's not the point. It's the point of like you're doing your best that day.
Yeah.
Right.
100%.
Right. So I think that's awesome.
And I mean, like, that goes back to like, everybody's going to have those days too, but then it comes down to like, are you disciplined or not? Because you don't really, people can get motivated to change their life and do all those things that they need to do in the moment, especially if you're like rock bottom, right? Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't take much to get motivated to like get your ass in gear, but it's like, okay, well, what do you do daily to like, motivation is fleeting, right?
Yes.
I mean, like, it's good to use as like, I can't remember who I heard say it, but like, use it as kindling, right? It's like, okay.
It gets you started.
I think it was Goggins. So it said like, you know what, motivation is great if you need to get that fire started, you know what I mean?
Yes.
But you can't like keep the fire stoked on kindling. You need discipline to like keep going.
So that was going to be one of my questions to use, because again, I'm looking at what you've done, especially in the MMA world, and you're diving into your acting career, which is super cool, and I love it. Especially the Star Wars one. I got lots of questions for you after, but that might be a couple hours. I could talk about Star Wars for years. But what are some habits that you are doing yourself? So again, you're in the gym lots. What are some other little habits maybe that are easy that somebody could just take and go, that's really cool, and that you've noticed this compound effect with?
Well, I mean, it definitely comes with the physical aspect of like, I'll make sure that I'm in the gym, when I'm training for a fight, I'll lift weights in the morning and then I'll work all day and then I fight train at night. But just having the habit of eating properly, like, it's okay to like have some meals, but like, you got to put the right stuff in your body, right? Especially as you get older. Like, I'm going to be 45 soon, right? But I'm still competing against guys that are in their 20s. So having the discipline, I mean, like, I still enjoy burgers and I'll get some candy on movie night and shit like that, right? But like 90% of my diet is just eating the same, like being healthy, right? And then recently I've put an emphasis on sleep, because I used to be like, okay, well, I'm just getting up at 4:45 and I'm hitting the gym no matter what, like no matter how, as many days in a row as I can. I'm just trying to go with that mentality of it, but which is good, as again, good for motivation and to like have that feeling of discipline. But now I'm also like, I heard a couple podcasts on Rogan, a neuroscientist talking about how important sleep is.
Yeah.
So I've been really putting like that as like my next priority. Like I'm pretty good with the food. I don't need motivation for that. Like getting to the gym and working out, like I've already got that dialed in. So that like I'm disciplined on that. But now I'm making sure that I'm getting enough sleep and not like being lazy and like laying in bed watching movies type of shit, but like putting like an emphasis, like, okay, putting my phone away. Well, the biggest thing probably for me is putting my phone down at 9
Yeah.
and like not going back to it, not scrolling, that shit kind of shit. Like,
The
okay,
scroll.
yeah, nobody's messaging me at 9 at night. I'm at that age that like nobody's messaging. None of my friends are up.
Yeah. Well, and,
So,
and you know what I always say too is like, what good is coming from this? Am I solving problems right now? Nope. And this is because
no,
I've struggled with sleep for years, and I've found a method, and I'm figuring it out. And for me, the first one was meditating. That was a
right.
huge one. Yeah, definitely. I mean, not only does it science shows that you can actually grow new brain cells because of it, which is amazing, but you
Yeah.
can, the visualization aspect, just the connecting with your own body, the being present. Like there's so many. It's been life changing for sure.
But by meditating, like, so what does that look like for you? Like, what is
Good question. So when I first started meditating, it was like, oh my God, I can't even close my eyes for a minute. I have so many things to do now. And then that kind of led to like, okay, well, I'm just going to sit here. And whatever pops in my head, I'm just going to sit with my eyes closed for 5 minutes and just do my best. And that was like probably a month. And then I started getting into guided meditations. And that was like 10, 15, 20 minutes, probably 10 to 15 minutes of guided ones, just breathing. And now I've been doing it for 5, 6 years to the point where now I can get there in, quite quickly. I'll do guided ones with breath. I'll do ones body focused ones. I'll do visualization ones where I can, visualize my goals, things that I want. I visualize meeting my wife, which is hilarious, which is amazing and fascinating. Uh,
manifest?
yeah, absolutely. To a vehicle we bought, to different things I've wanted in careers, and being
Yeah.
able to see these things come through, which has been really cool. So not only that, but on the football field, being able to do it, which is, so taking thoughts and putting them into and seeing them come through into action.
Nice.
Um, so for me, I'll do a lot of like anywhere from 15 to 20, sometimes 30 minutes of down to 15-minute ones, which are amazing.
So this is before you go to bed, or you do this in the morning, or you
I
do
do
both?
it. I do sometimes in the morning, sometimes I'll do it, afternoon. For a while then I'll just do it after work. So that's when I felt like my brain is the thickest. And it's you know what I mean, thick, like when you just have all that stuff
Yeah,
from
yeah.
the day in your brain. And
Noisy.
yeah, fuzzy. Yeah, fuzzy is a perfect word. And so for myself, I realized like, wait a minute, like I would get very snappy with my kids.
Yeah.
And because sometimes they're little shitheads, right? But I was getting snappy over little things. I'm like, it doesn't warrant, right?
Yeah.
What I'm getting upset over. Then
Yeah.
so I started meditating and realized like, wait, I'm like actually way better
Yeah.
person and way more calm.
Right.
And so I do it after work. Started doing them in the morning now. So either way, I say after work is really nice,
Mhm.
but the benefits are massive. And I could go on for days about how seen some incredible stuff with them. But
So does that involve you like processing what's happened in your during your day, or like what do you think about while you're doing this?
good question. So I always used to think, when I've read some books on it, like, oh, well, and when you meditate, you think about nothing. Well, it's actually impossible. Your brain takes a massive amount of effort and a lot of training. So
Yeah.
for most people, you can't. So in my head, I'm like, well, why? What's the point? So the way I do it now is I go, okay, well, thoughts are going to come in my head, popcorn thoughts, I call them.
Yeah.
I'm not going to chase them, because that's the problem, is that you end up chasing those thoughts, right? And then you're just sitting there thinking about your problems. So I'm not going to chase them. They're going to come up. And that can happen if I'm meditating for 30 minutes. That can happen if I'm doing it daily. It'll happen for about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
If I miss a few days, it'll happen the whole meditation.
Yeah.
But I'll have these popcorn thoughts. And then once those popcorn thoughts are through, and if I'm really, present, I'll be focusing on my breathing. And there are guided ones. I'll use Dr. Joe Dispenza. He has some amazing meditations.
Nice.
And I'll focus on my breathing, because with the breathing, it brings you present and brings you to now. And it's connecting the outside to the inside. So you can really like feel your body and get in touch with your body.
Yeah.
And then once I'm doing that, then I'll start with gratitude. I'll start with love. I'll start with thankfulness, whatever I'm feeling, whatever positive emotion I want to feel, and that I want to emulate in the world. thankfulness. Typically gratitude are the two easiest ones. I'll start with that, and I'll start being thankful. I have a family, I've got kids, I got a wife, I got, I have all these amazing things. And then I'll start thinking about the things that I want to accomplish. And when you combine those two, you can actually create some wonderful things. Even just those two combining with your, feeling gratitude, it actually, science shows it actually makes your magnetic field around your heart. So your heart has a magnetic field, right?
Right.
Well, your heart it'll go from being, your standard a couple meters to up to 9 meters wide.
Oh, wow.
This having this. So good examples, like, when you step in a room, you feel tension in a room, right? Right. Or you can feel like there's like some like love or energy or whatever, excitement. You can feel it. Why? Because everybody's feeling it in their heart and they're actually emulating that,
Oh,
which is
yeah, man.
super cool.
Energy and vibes are like, they're 100% real.
Yeah. And so you've probably felt it in a fight, in an arena where you can feel the crowd cheering and chanting. You're like, whoa, this is like, you can feel it on your skin. It's that tangible, right? And you know what I'm talking about. You can feel it right now. So, so it's there. So you can emulate that feeling in your heart while you're meditating, and that's sending out that energy, right? And that's kind of broadcasting that. And there's a lot of other science too, but even just on the point of how it makes you feel is wonderful and it's amazing. And then you tie that to what you want. And that's kind of what I like to do. And that can range from big things to little things to careers to partners. Sometimes it's just being thankful and being happy. I'm just alive and here. So definitely for me, that's a big mindset. For sleep, it's huge. I started doing that. I started taking magnesium, and that was a massive one. And then using a little bit of CBD as well, and it was a little bit of THC to help sleep.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, and I take it I take a few hours before bed, so I don't really feel the THC most of the time, but it helps me stay asleep. So that's definitely one of my recipes for success for sleep. And I feel like everybody could use more sleep, and not just more sleep, like I said, lying down watching TV, but rest, like true rest.
Man, well, if you start paying attention to like, I always ask people how they're doing, you know what I mean? Like through my work in the gym and like, even like grocery store clerks, everybody. And you listen to how many people say they're tired.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody. And it's just like, I think because we've got in this thing, like, you don't need to sleep,
Yeah. Grind till you die. And you're like, well, what's the point? Yeah.
Exactly, man. And I found that it's trickling down into all things. I'm just more happy, right? And more rested. And like after listening to the neuroscientist, the guy talk about what long-term lack of sleep can do to your overall health is just like, holy, there's a list of things.
Absolutely. And that was another reason why I started meditating, but then again, decrease the caffeine, and another little habit that me and my wife do, because we both notice this, one is social media. And now we do use it to share, what we're doing and that kind of stuff, but really limiting that. And a couple habits we have are, we don't look at our screen for the first 2 hours in the morning.
Right.
Minimum. But I mean, again, sometimes I'm putting on music to go to the gym. I'll press play and whatever, but I'm not looking at messages. I'm not emailing. I'm not looking at anything else, because what you'll find, and I think there's research showing this, that you become more addicted to it, and then you continue to try to do that for the rest of the day. So that increases your screen time. Well, and screen time, especially unproductive screen time, will drain you, right? And make you feel tired. And then same thing is like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, unless we're planning a family event, what have you. But generally speaking, phones are away in a stack, and we don't touch them. They don't need to be in the bedroom. The bedroom's for sleep and sex. You don't need phones in there. You don't need TVs in there. We don't need movies. You don't need to have that. We have a living room for that.
Yeah.
And that definitely has helped increase just the intimacy, which is amazing, but then having better quality of sleep, because you're not being inundated by these screens, because that can actually wake you up.
Oh, for sure, man. That's a good idea.
Yeah. So I want to dive in just a bit, because again, we could talk, you got a lot of really cool stuff going on, but I want to dive into a little bit about your acting career and what made you go that route, and how it's just, because again, we're kind of wrapping up here, but just how you're pushing yourself to do that.
Well, man, interesting topic for sure. So how that came about was, we had a kind of like our little group thing. We'd always do these Christmas parties, and there was always this one guy that he would get drunk and cause problems every single time. And I was always saving his ass from getting beat up. You know what I mean? And one day it was probably about the third or fourth Christmas in a row where I saved him from getting beat up by a bunch of guys. I'm like, you know what, man, you're gonna have to start paying me for this, like as a joke, right? And then somebody mentioned like, hey, you should look into like bodyguarding, and so I
Yeah.
looked into I did a little bit of security, and I was looking into some executive protection, and I talked to a couple of my buddies that actually do that,
Yeah.
and they quickly talked me out of it, saying, the like the crazy hardcore jobs, those usually go to like retired army guys, Navy
Yeah.
SEAL, stuff like that. Where I'm like, I'm not equipped to deal with that kind of thing, man.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
gnarly. And then the other side of it is that you're babysitting some drunk politician's kid or something like that that's going to
Yeah.
get you in fights anyways. And
Yeah.
so I was discouraged from that, but I was like, oh man, I just feel like I could really play the bodyguard kind of part.
Yeah.
And then that clicked in my head. I'm like, you know what? I'm like, oh, I should try that. So I literally Googled how to be an actor, and just started kind of following some things, and I had no idea how to do it or how to go about it. And so I went to I joined a class, took some acting classes, and then from there I got an agent, which is hard to do. And it's just been like, taking classes, taking scene study, being comfortable in front of the camera. And I going back to fighting again, I equate a lot of things back to fighting, but it was very similar, as in the focus of attention, and there's cameras and
Yes.
there's lights, and
Yeah.
I'm expected to perform. It's just another performance as far as I'm concerned. Nobody's
Yeah.
for real though, which is nice.
Yeah. 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 That's way better. I don't have to worry about any left hooks coming my way.
Oh man, yeah, it's funny, the fighting on film and the actual fighting are completely opposite, because
Mhm.
in real fighting, you're meant to look like the punch didn't phase you at all, and it didn't
Yeah.
even hit you, right? Be very stoic.
Yeah.
Whereas in film fighting, you're not getting hit like at all. You're missing by that much, and you have to be like super dramatic with it, right? But it's been like I'm not sure if you know or not, but there's been a writer strike and there's an actor
Yep.
strike right now, so things have been a little bit slow. But it's just another thing that I felt to challenge myself, and that I
Mm.
wasn't very good at. But I see enough potential that I want to keep doing it, and I've done it a few times, and I needed something that was as exciting as fighting. And
Yes.
there's
Yes.
not a lot of things out there.
No.
Eventually, I've retired like 4 times already from fighting, but I just love the competition, and there's not a lot of things that go out there that compare to that. But I
Yeah.
found acting and doing stunts, like, it's amazing, and just being around a film set and all the people that are on a film set. Like, I really love the variety of personalities on a film set. Such creative people that I would never normally get to be a part of. So like when I'm on a film set, I like to talk to every department and like find out,
Yeah.
like, what do you do? What do you do? What's this about? I'm just like a little kid, right? And but it's super interesting. And the thing I like about stunts is that it's very physical, and it's just cool to get in like gunfight scenes for fake.
Yeah.
And the thing I like about the acting is really delving into like characters and trying to understand a little bit about them,
Mm.
and trying to be like, it's make believe. You get to dress up and be like a different character, man. And I just find it super interesting.
That's awesome. I absolutely love that. And I love that you're doing that. And I love that you're willing to just put yourself out there and pursue that. And I've seen some of the stuff you've done, seen some like the commercials. I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, thanks,
So
man.
yeah, I love it. And I'm excited for you to do more. And again, we're kind of running out of time here, but
Yeah, no
would it be
worries.
like one or two little things that anybody listening, what would be your words of wisdom? Because you've done some amazing things and you continue to push yourself and do some amazing things. What would be some words of wisdom you want to pass on to someone else?
Well, good question, man. I would have to say, just from my own personal experience, is being okay and understanding that like bad things are going to happen.
Yeah.
And you can't avoid them all the time, and you can't expect only the good without the bad. That's just unfortunately not how that works, right? So
Yep.
we're all going to go through tough times, and that's just the way that it is. You shouldn't avoid them, and you should learn to like embrace them, because that's actually what's going to make you stronger.
Yeah.
And mentally tougher. Like there's only one way to get more mentally tough, and that's to overcome adversity.
Yes.
You can do this. You can do this on a small scale by pushing yourself physically through tough things daily, but you have to embrace the suck.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? As Goggins would say. And you have to like look at something like, okay, well, this is a lesson or a strength that I'm going to learn, because this sucks right now. My life sucks. Like for me right now, I'm going through a hard time with my friend, but it's like, you know what? Like this is what's going to make me stronger is having to do this. I'm like, there's no other option to just get through it. You know what I mean? Like you have to find strength in yourself to get through the tough times, to have the tough conversations that you need to have with others, with yourself. And so don't run from that shit. You know what I mean? You have to, and it's never as bad as you think it is once you deal with it.
Yeah.
And another thing that I would have to say is just make yourself harder to kill. You know?
Yes.
Like whether like put whatever spin on that you want, but I mean in the times that we go through, like I'm very fortunate that I have the body, I'm able to do the things that I want, and I have the ability to protect the people around me that need protecting, right? So get out there, make yourself stronger, get like a fight. So you don't have to necessarily do a fight skill, but do jiu-jitsu or like learn some sort of physicality with your body to make yourself stronger, make yourself harder to kill.
Yeah. No, I absolutely love that. And I think more people need that. I don't see any down there. And the beautiful part about that stuff is there's no, especially the last bit there's no negative side with that. Nothing, right? There's no one I've ever met has done jiu-jitsu for years and be like, oh, I wish I never did jiu-jitsu. You know what I mean? Oh, I wish I didn't know how to like kick ass in MMA. Like no one ever says that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing. They continue to pursue and get better and learn to really have an appreciation for the field and for other people.
Yeah.
And actually are the ones like, funny enough, getting the fights the least.
Yeah.
Right. Because like you said before, they don't have anything to guard. They don't have anything. Their guard's not up and their chest isn't out trying to look for a fight. Right. So
it's such an interesting time, man, because we have to learn to be like easier on ourselves, but also harder on ourselves in a way. So it's very counterintuitive, if you know what I mean. Like,
yeah, I agree.
It's okay if you're not this or you're not that or you're not as far as you want to be, right? But also, it's not okay to just sit there either. So acknowledge that it's fine that you're not where you're at, or you're, you know, if you're overweight or your finances are in bad shape or your relationship is in a poor spot. Like that's okay to acknowledge it, but don't let it sit there either, right?
Yes. And on that, I think that is a beautiful way to end it, because I 100% agree. Bad shit will happen, but do something about it. Accept it and then do something about it. So thank you so much, Grayson. This has been one of the best interviews I've ever done. And I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate your vulnerability. And I know people are going to learn from this. How can people follow you if they want to follow you, or how can they see what you're up to?
Well, my Instagram, Grayson Wells 1, and just my Facebook, Grayson Bruce Wells. And yeah, man, I appreciate you taking the time to let me talk like this. And it's good to see you again, as always, my friend.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
All right. Take care, brother. Likewise.
What an awesome interview with Grayson. I know that interview could have went for another hour or two, just because of the knowledge and the wisdom that man has and how he's applying that to his life and pushing himself. And I love how he's using fighting in a ring to grow himself as a person, and he's able to hold both of those things, to be able to be that kind of person that can step in a ring and fight somebody and having a beautiful, amazing relationship. So thanks so much for listening. If you haven't yet, I'd ask you to subscribe. And if you know somebody that could use and learn from these types of episodes and podcasts, share it with a few friends, because that's what it's all about. It's about learning and then sharing that information. So thank you so much for listening. I'll catch you on the next episode.